Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my siblings with our mother's funeral plans and for telling them I do not want to be named in her obituary? My mother died 2 days ago. My siblings were all with her when she died. I was not. She was a bully to me and hated my guts for as long as I can remember. Not sure if it was the fact that I was the kid who looked so much like Dad, the fact she was young when she got pregnant with me and resented me for it, or whether I was just unlucky. But she gave me a horrific childhood. And my dad died when we were all young, so I was left to watch her dote on my siblings and treat me like trash. I got to hear all the time that I ruined her life, that she wished she had aborted me, that she dreamed of me dying and getting the relief knowing she'd never have to see me again. I ended up staying with friends from the age of 15, but I hadn't seen her since my 20th birthday, when she showed up with my siblings and told me she wanted to puke just looking at me. I never told her I was gay, never introduced her to my partner or my children. When my siblings called to tell me she was dying, I was so happy. Knowing she's gone, knowing that the woman who hated me for reasons out of my control, who made sure I know how much she never wanted me, filled me with such a feeling of relief. But of course, my siblings are heartbroken. They wanted me to be involved. I told them no way, no how. I said she was a great mother to them and that was fine. But she was evil to me. She was evil and made my childhood hell. And I was not a grieving child and was not spending a single second giving her a nice send-off or spending a single cent on it either. They got mad. Told me it should be split between all of us. They had already planned her obituary and told me how bad I would look if I don't help plan or don't show up. So I told them to get my name off the obituary because the woman they described was not my mother. We argued. They told me I was behaving just as badly as her by taking it out on them when they did nothing wrong. I told them I just wanted them to leave me out of it. I told them to pretend we're half siblings and I have a different mother out there if it helps. They told me I could at least do it for them and to think about how hard this has been for them. The fighting just keeps on going and it actually delayed the funeral planning since they spent more time trying to convince me than doing any planning. They keep asking for my opinion, etc., trying to draw me in, then get mad and tell me I am treating them badly. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Your siblings can't force you to be involved. Your experience of her as your mother is clearly very different to theirs. Stand firm. And tell them again that you are not interested. You will not be going and you will not be contributing financially. Tell them you are not going to be discussing this subject again. Or you could agree to be in the obituary, so long as the whole thing begins with the line, "Ding dong, the witch is dead." That should make them back off. Not the a-hole. I suspect that they really want to split the cost of the funeral and this is why they are pressuring you. Not the a-hole. That said, you may want to be slightly involved for the sake of your relationship with your siblings. As you suggested, you can think of them as half-siblings with a different mom. If your half-siblings just lost their mom, how would you react? Would you be consoling? Would you consider chipping in if they were short on money? Would you want to be around for those half-siblings even though they're grieving a stranger to you? If the answer is yes, then consider helping out. If the answer is no, then stay firm. I would, assuming the person wasn't evil to me, but I hate the idea of helping give her a nice send-off. That's where the issue is. I'd love to just leave her to rot and end up forgotten. Next story. Am I the a-hole for stealing my sister's baby? My 29 little sister, female 21, we'll call her Jane, has a 14-month-old baby girl we'll call Sarah, whom I have had custody of since late June of 2022. Jane was divorcing her husband, jobless and homeless. I offered to take temporary guardianship of Sarah so she would be safe and cared for while Jane got her life together. At first, she turned me down. However, after Sarah was dropped off to our mom's house in dirty clothes and an old diaper by a stranger, while she was supposed to be under the care of her father, Jane agreed to give her to me and my wife. Now, we made clear that it would be temporary and that Jane would still have full access and could get Sarah back whenever she felt ready. However, during the last 6 months, Jane has completely disappeared from Sarah's life. She doesn't ask about her. She doesn't make any effort to visit her. She doesn't ask us to bring her to visit. She has gotten a job and an unsafe place to stay, yet hasn't offered to take any financial responsibility, not even in the form of buying her gifts. She doesn't call to talk to her or see her. I spoke to Jane recently about all this, and her defense is that it's too emotionally hurtful to see Sarah, because of how much it hurts and how much she misses her. Her other excuse is that she doesn't have a car or enough money to afford Ubers or diapers. I told her how absolutely ridiculous all that is. You don't need a car or money to call or text. We have always made clear we'd be willing to bring Sarah to her, and she spends a wasteful amount of money on food and vapes. Even after speaking to her about the things she should or could be doing, she still has made no changes. Because of this, my wife and I have decided to look into our legal options for adoption. Sarah has legally been abandoned, and we only need to keep her a little longer before the courts would allow termination of Jane and her husband's rights, as husband is even more missing in action than Jane is. Jane is livid about this, and is threatening all kinds of things, but has done nothing. Important information. After I offered originally, and before we actually got physical custody of Sarah, my wife and I attempted IVF and failed. We haven't told anyone about this, even family. However, I told Jane about this on day one, just so that there would be full honesty and so that none of this would seem sneaky if it were to come out later. Jane is bringing this up in a very hurtful way during all this, saying that I'm trying to steal her baby, since we can't have one of our own though we have one adopted son already. And this is very far from the truth. We are genuinely worried about the safety and well-being of Sarah if she were to go back to Jane, and the fact that Jane has essentially ghosted her baby. We feel we have every right to pursue permanent guardianship and adoption. So am I the a-hole? Edit, as several people have asked, why don't I take in my sister too? I don't have space or money for an adult. Sarah has a bed in our room, and we spend about $700 a month on her. There is no way we could cover an adult too. And even if we could, she's not someone I would live with. She is a very unclean person, doesn't shower nor wash her clothes, and hangs out with junkies and other questionable people. She lost her last living situation because her roommate was arrested for possession of meth at home. My wife and I have a 7-year-old son, and now Sarah to protect. Not the a-hole. Saying you stole Sarah is just Jane's way of abandoning her child while absolving herself of the guilt. I imagine the emotions there are pretty complicated. Stop worrying about Jane or looking bad and take comfort in the fact that you are doing what is best for Sarah. Anyone who believes Jane over you isn't worth having on your team anyway. Good luck. Not the a-hole. I am an adopted kid. My mom was an addict and knew she wouldn't get her life together. Look, wait until she can legally sever ties and don't bring this up again. Keep track of every time you reach out asking for assistance or offer to take the little baby to Sarah to her mother, and she refuses or misses an appointment. In California, it's 15 months to sever ties. Do not leave her unsupervised. Once you hit your state's threshold, lawyer up and make your case. If legally you have already temporary custody, a good portion of the battle is won. It's better to maintain the status quo and peacefully win the war than preempt an uphill battle in the family court. Bide your time, make your case open and close, and then formally adopt your daughter. I wish you all the best. Thank you. This is exactly the plan. Where does the rest of your family stand on this issue? Will they support you in this process? My mom is on the fence, but all my siblings are on my side. If your mother ever gives you pushback, you should remind her how Sarah was delivered back into her life, in dirty clothes and an old diaper. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not including my grandchildren's stepmother, step and half siblings in a family book? My youngest daughter died 9 years ago. She left behind a husband, Joe, and 3 children. My granddaughter is now 17 and my grandsons are now 16 and 15. Joe has since remarried to a lovely woman, Marie. Marie has a son and a daughter from a previous marriage, and she and Joe had a 5-year-old together. We get along fine with Marie and the other children, though I would not say we are very close, and we are definitely not like we were when my daughter was alive. That appears to now be a problem. You see, there is a book, a scrapbook type of book, where we add new members of the family to it, and the children born get little updates about them until they're grown. It was started by my grandmother, and continued by my mother and now me. It's not in the best condition, but we cherish it in the family, and those who are gone. When we look back, there's little memories in there to make us smile. Well, I do not have Marie or any of her children in this book, but they're aware of the book's existence from Joe and from my grandchildren. My oldest granddaughter and her partner became parents recently, and the book became a hot topic. And Marie was unhappy that my great-grandchild was included, but not her and her kids, because my great-grandchild is not related by blood. Joe told me the kids would love to have their whole family added to it, but then my grandchildren claimed something different, and it has become such a mess. Joe, Marie and I eventually sat down to discuss it, and they told me they feel like Marie and the kids should be shown full acceptance as part of the whole family and included. Marie also added that she should be added where Joe is, which is Paige's joint to my daughters, and I said that would never happen. She told me and her kids are just part of my family, but I told her she is not. I made it very clear she will never be my daughter. Joe told me it would set a good example for my grandchildren, for them to fully embrace Marie and the children, to drop the need for step, and see that they are all accepted just as much as he and they are. And I told him I could not do that, that I love him, that I love my grandchildren, but I do not love Marie or their other children. That I like them and they are good to have around, but it is not the same. Now they're angry, while my grandchildren are upset their dad wanted Marie and the other kids to be in the book. Marie called me a terrible grandmother in person, and that she had told her kids I was grandma, and now I had made their lives so much more terrible. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. This woman is basically a stranger to you. You don't owe it to her to be added in the family book. And your grandchildren understand this as well. The issue is Joe and Marie. I imagine the grandchildren are hurt and feel like she's trying to shove into their memories of their mother. Love that dad lied about his kids' feelings too. Glad grandma asked them directly. I don't understand these people who marry a widow/widower and can't accept they're a widow/widower. Like, just marry someone who doesn't have that baggage if you don't want to deal with it. Not the a-hole. This is a very clear-cut case of not the a-hole. Marie and her children are not related to you by blood. Marie is not married to your son or daughter. Marie is married to your late daughter's widowed husband. Joe only happens to be in the book because he was married to your daughter, who has since died. Joe, too, has no connection to you anymore. Since your daughter is no longer around to have a say, her children need to do that for her. And they have. They don't want Marie and her children in this book. Joe should be happy that you're continuing the tradition for your daughter's children. For his older children, his mother has died, and so should Marie. If Joe and Marie care so much, they should have started a new book years ago for their own blended family. But they cannot demand that extended family members do the same. This is yet another case of step-parents trying to force relationship with their stepchildren. And in this case, she's trying to replace the dead wife/mother. I don't understand why people can't understand that step-parent is an important relationship that can exist separately from children's love for their biological parents. Last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my adult sister that our family isn't cursed because our parents got divorced? My 37 female sister Jan, 41, can't get over our parents' divorce. Our parents have been divorced for over 20 years. Growing up, it was evident from a young age that their marriage was messed up. Dad even cheated a lot and never tried to hide it. When I was 6 and Jan was 9, Dad got Mom a dozen roses. Using context clues from things I remember at a time and confirmation from family, he was trying to apologize for an affair that got out of hand which led to a huge fight. A few years later, Jan saw something romantic/cutesy on TV and asked why he never got Mom flowers. Dad said, "Roses are cursed and make your mom mad at me." Jan periodically brings up the "roses are cursed" BS every few years. I can't keep track of what upsets Jan. She also thinks dates that end in a 1 or 2 are cursed, blue trucks on the highway are cursed, types of food, and a bunch of other stuff nobody should be expected to remember. It was my mother's birthday this weekend, and her boyfriend hosted brunch. I wasn't thinking and got Mom an arrangement that included roses. Mom loved it and put it in the kitchen. Jan showed up later with her family, all smiles, until about an hour later when she went into the kitchen, let out a blood-curdling wail, and started crying that roses were cursed and made Mommy divorce Daddy. She then ranted that I cursed the family by bringing roses into the house on Mom's birthday. I snapped and said Mom and Dad got divorced because Dad was banging his way through our whole zip code in the 90s. Flowers aren't cursed. We are not cursed. That Dad made bad choices. And if she couldn't come to terms with that, then she needed to seek treatment because her behavior wasn't acceptable or normal. She looked at me like I had interrupted her Oscar speech. She and her husband then left and we tried to salvage the day. Mom's boyfriend thanked me, but Mom and our aunt say I'm the a-hole and that Jan is sensitive and delicate and I should have known better than to bring flowers. My husband doesn't care. He just won't go to family functions with Jan there now. Not the a-hole. Your sister clearly has a lot of unprocessed trauma from the divorce. This is absolutely not normal for a grown woman to react this way 20 plus years later. She needs serious therapy. I work with one of her former coworkers, and apparently she flipped out similarly when a colleague of hers was sent roses from her husband, which led to her being fired. This happened about 7 or 8 years ago. She was around 17 when your parents divorced? She sounds like a flipping toddler. This weird superstition is adversely affecting her family and career. You are totally right. She needs help. And what the heck does she think roses are going to do? Your parents are already divorced. Roses aren't going to make them get a second one. Not the a-hole. I was about 17. She was 21, I think. Definitely not the a-hole. Your sister is unhinged. She definitely needs therapy. She's in denial. And I think about your father and why they divorced. And it's made her the way she is. So when this outburst happened, it's almost like she was in a dissociated state and was speaking as if she was a child again. I think that's giving her a little too much leeway. She 100% knows what she's doing. Not the a-hole, but you and her didn't live the same past. This was a really tough one for me to learn, that my trauma from our childhood isn't the same as my brother's and sister's trauma, even if we lived through the same event. It seems like these curses are a way for her to control things that can be controlled and are overwhelming for her. I get it seems like she's victimizing herself, but maybe she doesn't have the same emotional strength, mental skills, or tools that you do. It's okay you snapped. Family is super frustrating, but try to remember something that scares you doesn't scare someone else. Something that makes you laugh doesn't make someone else laugh. Trauma and memories are the same way. I get that, but after a certain amount of time, 20 years perhaps, we don't have to continue to be held hostage by someone else's traumatic outbursts.